Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Night was falling on New York. The skyscrapers glittered like jewels in the darkness, reflecting the power of a city that never sleeps. The streets, bustling with luxury cars and hurried taxis, pulsed to the rhythm of modernity. But behind this facade of wealth, shadows lived in silence, forgotten in the corners of the sidewalks, hidden from view. Marcus Williams, one of the wealthiest men in the country, had just left a charity gala held at a prestigious hotel. Dressed in a bespoke suit, wearing a rare watch, and with a confident gaze, he embodied the American dream. The journalists, still gathered outside the entrance, had applauded his generous donations, $50 million to fight poverty and help the homeless. He was hailed as a philanthropist, a visionary, a modern-day hero. Escorted by his bodyguards, Marcus was about to get into his limousine when something caught his eye. A crowd had gathered a few meters away on the sidewalk. Passers-by were whispering and taking out their phones to film. Intrigued, Marcus approached, slightly parting his security detail. There, sitting on a worn piece of cardboard, a homeless man shivered under layers of dirty, torn clothing. His face was marked by fatigue and misery, his unkempt beard barely concealing premature wrinkles. In his hands, a sign written in marker simply read, "I'm hungry. Help me." But it wasn't the sign that had frozen Marcus. Nor even the man's obvious distress. It was his face. A brutal shock coursed through his entire being. This beggar, he looked just like him. Not a vague resemblance, but a striking one, almost identical. The same features, the same dark skin, the same deep eyes, but in a body broken by the streets. Marcus felt as if he were looking in a cracked mirror, as if a fallen and abandoned version of himself was facing him. The homeless man slowly raised his head, their eyes met, and a chill ran through the air. Then, in a hoarse and trembling voice, the man murmured, "Marcus." The billionaire took a step back in astonishment. How could he possibly know his name? The crowd held its breath. Some were already throwing out theories: a lost twin brother, an imposter, an incredible doppelganger. But deep down, a nagging fear was taking root in Marcus. What if this beggar wasn't a coincidence? What if, behind that face, a truth buried for far too long was about to explode? That evening, in the middle of the city that shone with 1,000 lights, Marcus Williams did not yet know that this encounter would turn his life upside down, expose his most intimate secrets and shock all of humanity. Marcus remained frozen. His bodyguards approached, worried, but he gestured for them not to interfere. His eyes could not tear themselves away from that face which reflected back to him the image of a parallel destiny. The homeless man lowered his head for a moment, as if crushed by the weight of shame, then raised it again. His brown eyes, tired but intense, seemed to probe directly into the billionaire's soul. Marcus felt a pang in his heart that he hadn't experienced in years, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and unease. Around them, passers-by were whispering, "Look, it's incredible, he looks just like his twin brother." "No, that's impossible, maybe a paid look-alike? Or perhaps a scandal is about to erupt." Phones were raised in the crowd, capturing every second. The scene was going viral live, and Marcus knew it. His image, carefully constructed through years of success and philanthropy, was faltering before the eyes of the world. He took a deep breath and squatted down, ignoring the smell of grime and the dirt of the sidewalk. "Who are you?" he asked in a low but firm voice. The man gave a sad smile. His damaged teeth contrasted with his familiar features. "You don't recognize me?" Marcus frowned. The tone of that voice, despite its roughness, reminded him of something, but what? "We have the same blood," murmured the homeless man. A shiver ran through Marcus. Before he could reply, one of the bodyguards intervened sharply. "Mr. Williams, we have to leave. Right away. The cameras." But Marcus raised a hand. No. He had to know. He had to understand why this man resembled him so much, why his words resonated like a buried truth. The limousine waited, camera flashes popped, the city continued its ballet of light and noise. But for Marcus, everything seemed to have stopped. He was alone, facing this living reflection, and the premonition that this encounter was not a coincidence, but the beginning of an irreversible upheaval. The silence that had settled in seemed unreal amidst the tumult of the city. The distant honking horns, the hurried footsteps on the sidewalk, the murmurs of the crowd, everything seemed muffled, as if the universe were holding its breath. The homeless man trembled slightly, then placed his calloused hands on the damp ground to pull himself up with difficulty. His legs wobbled, and Marcus instinctively moved to support him, but stopped at the last moment, as if paralyzed by the fear of what he was about to hear. The man stared straight into his eyes. His voice, though hoarse and tired, carried a singular strength. "Marcus, you can't have forgotten me." The billionaire took a step back. The sound of that voice stirred a buried emotion. A distant resonance, like an echo of a past he thought was gone. He tried to compose himself, to maintain his usual composure. "Who are you?" he repeated, this time more dryly, as if to protect himself. A sad, almost resigned smile appeared on the man's face. "I am the one your family erased. The one you lost, your brother." The word hit like a thunderclap, brother. Marcus felt his stomach clench. His throat tightened. The murmurs of the crowd turned into a hubbub. Some were laughing nervously, others were filming frantically. A brother? The billionaire had a homeless brother? Is this a joke? My God, if it's true, it's going to go viral. The bodyguards moved closer, one of them whispering. "Mr. Williams, this is becoming dangerous. This man may be crazy. Let us push him back." But Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't really hear what was happening around him anymore. His heart was pounding. Was it possible? He, an only child, the cherished heir of a family that had given him everything, could have a forgotten brother, cast out onto the street like a ghost from the past? The man continued, his voice trembling but determined. "You don't recognize me because you grew up in the light, but I survived in the shadows." Marcus's eyes widened. Part of him wanted to cry out against the imposture, the manipulation. But another, deeper part sensed a strange truth. For in that broken voice, he perceived a familiar sound, like a long-buried childhood memory. That evening, Marcus understood that his certainties were about to crumble. This homeless man was not a stranger. He might be a reflection of his own story, the missing piece of his family puzzle. And this revelation, already filmed and broadcast live by hundreds of phones, was soon to ignite the entire world. The street had been transformed into a theater. What began as a disturbing encounter became a public spectacle, captured by dozens of phones held aloft. Fascinated passers-by didn't want to miss a thing of this seemingly unreal moment. "It's crazy, he really looks like his brother. Do you think it's true, or is it staged? Look at their eyes, this isn't acting." The rumors spread like wildfire. Videos were already being posted on social media, accompanied by catchy titles. Billionaire Marcus Williams confronts a homeless man who claims to be his brother. Within minutes, the scene had moved from the sidewalk to the whole world. Marcus, aware of the camera's gaze, felt his breath quicken. He, used to controlling every detail of his image, found himself trapped in a raw, uncontrollable moment. His communications advisors, if they were watching this live, must already be panicking. The homeless man, however, didn't seem to care about the crowd. His eyes remained fixed on Marcus. "All this time. I waited for you to recognize me. And now here we are in front of everyone." Marcus clenched his fists. His voice became harsher, but it trembled despite himself. "Stop talking nonsense. I don't have a brother." A bitter burst of laughter escaped the homeless man's throat. "That's what they always wanted you to believe. But the truth always comes out in the end." The murmurs intensified, the crowd reacting to every word. "My God, listen to him. If he was lying, why would he have so many details? And if he told the truth, imagine the scandal. Marcus's bodyguards tried to disperse the onlookers, but it was too late. The scene had gone viral, with everyone eager to capture the unfolding drama live. Marcus felt a cold sweat trickle down his back. This was no longer just a strange encounter. It was a media frenzy, and he was at its center. The homeless man took a step closer, his gaze burning with truth. You can disown me here, Marcus. You can call me crazy in front of these people. But sooner or later, the world will know. At that moment, Marcus understood that he had lost control. His life, his empire, his public image, everything could collapse because of this face that resembled him too closely. And for the first time in years, he felt fear. Not fear of business, not fear of enemies, but a more intimate fear, the fear that his past was hiding a truth he wasn't ready to face. The street scene had haunted Marcus all night. Back in his vast penthouse overlooking Manhattan, he found no peace. The homeless man, his double, his words, everything kept replaying in his mind. Was it a cleverly orchestrated deception? Or, a truth his parents had always hidden? The next morning, Marcus urgently summoned his mother, Evelyn Williams. An elegant woman despite her age, renowned in social circles for her dignity and sense of discretion, she arrived in the living room with its bay windows, where the entire city seemed to stretch out beneath their feet. Marcus, why all the secrecy? She asked, placing her gloves on the coffee table. You seemed so upset on the phone. He wasted no time. Last night, I met a man. A homeless man. He claims to be my brother. Evelyn barely flinched, but this slight movement did not escape her son's notice. Her fingers tightened on her handbag. Marcus stared intently at her. Tell me it's not true. A heavy silence filled the room. Evelyn looked away, as if searching for words in the void. Then she sighed deeply. Marcus, there are things you don't know. Things your father and I have decided never to reveal. Marcus's heart sank. So it's true? I have a brother? Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, as if crushed by the weight of decades of silence. Yes. David. Your older brother. The name landed like a slap in the face. Marcus stepped back, stunned. Why did you never tell me anything? Her mother's voice broke slightly. Because David wasn't like you. From childhood, he had behavioral problems. Your father thought he would destroy us all. So, when he was still young, we made the decision to place him in an institution. An institution? Repeated Marcus, incredulous. You mean, you abandoned it? Evelyn pressed her handkerchief against her trembling lips. We thought it was for his own good, but he never came back. We rebuilt our lives, and we chose never to talk about it. Marcus felt anger rising. His whole world was collapsing. He, the man who had built an empire on loyalty and truth, was discovering that his very existence was based on a lie. And what about me? He shouted. Me, your son, I grew up without knowing I had a brother living on the streets, reduced to begging to survive, while I lived in luxury. Her mother lowered her eyes, unable to answer. The weight of her silence was a condemnation in itself. Marcus then understood that the homeless man was not an impostor. He was indeed his blood, his flesh and blood. An abandoned brother, sacrificed to preserve the perfect image of the Williams family. And now, this truth risked not only shattering his empire, but tearing apart the image he had of his own parents. The next day, Marcus returned to the place of their first meeting. Part of him hoped it had all been a bad dream, that the man had vanished into the anonymity of the city. But there he was. David. Sitting against the wall of a fast food restaurant, a plastic cup in front of him, he seemed even more fragile than the day before. Yet, when Marcus approached, his eyes lit up with a bright light. You've come back, he said softly. I knew you couldn't ignore me forever. Marcus remained standing, stiff, with his hands in his coat pockets. My mother spoke to me. She confirmed your existence. David gave a wry smile. So, she stopped denying it. It was about time. Marcus hesitated, then crouched down to her level, just like the day before. Tell me, David. What happened after they entrusted you to that institution? David's eyes grew dim, and his voice became hoarse, filled with pain. I was 8 years old when they placed me. They told me it was for my own good. But it was just an orphanage in disguise. A place where unwanted children ended up forgotten. I experienced hunger, beatings, and humiliation there. They told me I was unwanted, that my family would never come back. Marcus gritted his teeth. David continued, his eyes shining with suppressed tears. I waited, Marcus. For years, I waited for you. I thought my little brother would come for me one day. But you were growing up in luxury, without even knowing I existed. The billionaire lowered his head, unable to meet that accusing stare. I didn't know. I swear. I know, David replied. And that's the worst part. You weren't even aware. You were living their lie, while I was surviving their rejection. A heavy silence fell between them. Marcus felt guilt wash over him. He, who had built a reputation as a philanthropist, who funded programs to save strangers, had let his own brother die a slow death in poverty. David continued, his voice broken but firm. The street became my home. Alcohol, my only warmth. And every time I saw your face in the newspapers, on screens, I thought to myself, there you go, my brother has everything. And I have nothing left. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Part of him wanted to reach out, to snatch her away from this life immediately, but another feared that this gesture would be perceived as pity. David, he said finally, his voice low. I can't erase the past. But perhaps it's not too late to make amends. David's eyes, tired and wary, searched Marcus's for a trace of sincerity. And in that broken man's gaze, Marcus glimpsed a painful truth: repairing might not be enough. They would have to confront the wounds, the secrets, and above all, the gaze of the world, which was already seizing their story. Marcus invited David to follow him to a small, discreet cafe in the city center, far from prying eyes and cameras. The customers, intrigued by this unlikely pairing, a billionaire in an elegant suit facing a homeless man in worn clothes, whispered quietly, but Marcus didn't care. He wanted to understand. They sat facing each other. Between them, a steaming cup of coffee for David, the first hot drink he had tasted in days. Tell me about your life, Marcus said calmly. Everything. I want to know. David stared at the cup for a few moments before looking up. You want the truth? It's not pretty. While you were studying at the best schools, I was running away to escape the beatings of the teachers. While you were signing your first contracts, I was signing papers to sleep in shelters. While you were building your empire, I was just trying to find a piece of bread and a dry place to sleep. His words were harsh, but there was neither excessive jealousy nor hatred. Just immense weariness, a bitter realization. Marcus listened, his heart heavy. He reviewed his own journey, his prestigious degrees, his early successes, the investors who believed in him. He had attributed all of this to his hard work. But facing David, he understood that his starting point had changed everything. We share the same blood, David continued. But society hasn't been the same towards us. You were the prodigal son. I was the difficult child. Doors were opened for you. I was left out in the cold. Marcus clenches his mug, jaw clenched. And me. I believed all my life that I was an only child. They lied to me, David. To you as well as to me. David gave a sad smile. That's the difference between us. You grew up in lies. I grew up in abandonment. A heavy silence fell. Marcus felt overwhelmed by a brutal truth: their lives weren't simply different, they were a reflection of the world's injustices. Two brothers, two opposing destinies, but one common origin. Marcus finally breathed a sigh of relief, almost to himself. We could have been two kings, but they divided us. David shook his head. No, Marcus. You have become a king. I have become your shadow. Those words pierced Marcus. For the first time, he understood that his success only had meaning if it served to bridge that chasm. And that gap, from now on, was no longer just personal, it represented the difference between those who had everything, and those whom the world had left behind. The long-awaited day arrived. In a grand hotel in the city, Jonathan had organized a press conference. The media had turned out in droves, drawn by the mystery of an invitation sent by one of the most powerful men in the country. On the stage, Jonathan stepped forward in a dark suit, his elegant and confident features contrasting with the palpable emotion in his voice. Behind him, still hidden from the public eye, Marcus waited, this time dressed in new clothes, but his face, marked by life, remained the one sculpted by the streets. The cameras clicked, the journalists took notes. Jonathan began his speech. Ladies and gentlemen, you know me as a businessman, a billionaire who built an empire. But it's time for me to share a truth that deeply moves me. Success only takes on its full meaning when it is shared. Then, with a theatrical but sincere gesture, he invited Marcus to join him on stage. A murmur rippled through the room. The two men stood side by side, strikingly similar. The cameras focused on them. Jonathan placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder and continued. Many have passed by this man without ever looking at him. He has been judged, rejected, ignored. But he carries within him the same value as each of us. I present to you Marcus, my brother at heart, and perhaps even more. For we share much more than a simple intertwined destiny. The room erupted in questions. Journalists shouted, intrigued by the word even more. Jonathan smiled, then added gravely. We discovered that we are bound by blood. Marcus is my brother, abandoned and forgotten by a system that could have saved him. But today, I choose to right this wrong. From now on, he will no longer be an invisible homeless person, but a recognized, dignified, and respected man. The cameras captured the tears streaming down Marcus's face as he struggled to believe what was happening. The world had just witnessed a shocking revelation, the billionaire and the homeless man, bound by a lost brotherhood, reunited before the eyes of humanity. The end of the conference was just the beginning of a global shock. The announcement was a bombshell. Within hours of the conference, every television channel, radio station, and newspaper was talking about it. On social media, photos of Jonathan and Marcus side by side went viral. The hashtags #2brothersunited, #JusticeForMarcus, and #HumanityFirst spread at lightning speed. In the streets, strangers began discussing this story that seemed straight out of a movie. Some cried with emotion, others debated passionately, how could a man have sunk into oblivion while his own brother lived in opulence? Television programs invited experts to analyze the case. Sociologists spoke of glaring inequalities, historians recalled past injustices, and psychologists explained the trauma of a separated childhood. Meanwhile, Marcus, still in shock, was living his first days away from the streets. Journalists tried to approach him, but Jonathan had taken care to protect him, offering him shelter in one of his private residences, far from prying eyes. Yet even in this sea of media attention, Marcus remained humble. In a brief statement he agreed to make, he said in a trembling but dignified voice. I am not an attraction. I am simply a man who suffered in silence. If today my story can serve to remind the world that every life has value, then I thank God for this miracle. His words further shocked public opinion. Charities contacted Jonathan to propose partnerships to help other homeless people. Thousands of citizens volunteered for acts of solidarity. The whole world now saw in Marcus not a beggar, but a symbol of humanity regained. But behind this global momentum, some observers were beginning to ask a burning question: what would happen now to Jonathan and Marcus? Would their rekindled bond survive the test of fame and scrutinizing eyes? The following weeks were a whirlwind for Marcus. The once forgotten man, now thrust into the spotlight, had to learn to navigate a world he had never known. Every gesture, every word was scrutinized. Journalists, philanthropists, and even strangers offered him their help, but also their judgment. Jonathan, aware of his brother's fragility, watched over him with almost paternal vigilance. He showed him a simple but comfortable apartment, far from luxury palaces and conference rooms, so that Marcus could rebuild himself at his own pace. "Here, you're not Marcus Williams the billionaire," Jonathan explained to him. "You're Marcus, the man I've waited for all my life." At first, Marcus was hesitant. The streets, the deprivations, the shadow of the past, all of it weighed heavily on him. But he began to regain the dignity that had been denied him. He received new clothes, medical treatment, and, above all, regained an emotional stability he had never known. He also spent time telling his story. Not to create a sensation, but to bear witness to the invisible misery and lives shattered by the system. His story touched the hearts of millions. The media broadcast reports about his experiences on the streets, contrasting sharply with his current life. But the transformation didn't stop there. Marcus wanted to take action. With Jonathan, they decided to create the David Marcus Foundation, intended to offer shelter, training, and psychological support to the homeless. Marcus was no longer just a beneficiary, he had become an agent of change, using his experience to inspire and help. For the first time, he felt a true sense of power, not the power of money or influence, but the power of resilience and positive impact. The world, which had once ignored him, now looked to him as a symbol of redemption and hope. And deep down, a certainty was born: his life was no longer just a matter of survival or material success. It had found a true purpose. Months passed, and Marcus Williams was no longer the same man. The world had learned his story, and it had touched millions of hearts. Articles and reports proliferated, some celebrating his resilience, others condemning the injustice he had suffered. But Marcus and Jonathan weren't seeking glory, they wanted to right the wrongs, together. One morning, a public event was held in Central Park. Thousands of people gathered, curious and moved, to see Marcus and Jonathan inaugurate a homeless shelter called Hope Regained. Cameras from all over the world were broadcasting the scene live. Marcus spoke, his voice firm but full of emotion. "For years, I believed my life had no value. But today, I understand that every life matters. This center is dedicated to those who have been forgotten, to those who have been abandoned. And I am here to tell the world, it is never too late to change someone's destiny." The crowd applauded, some sobbing, moved by this sincerity. But the most unexpected moment came when Marcus looked up and met the gaze of his brother, David. "I want to show you something," he said. Then, with Jonathan's help, he brought in about 15 formerly homeless people who had participated in the Foundation's pilot program. Each of them was now wearing clean clothes, some smiling for the first time in years. The scene was overwhelming. The contrast between past hardship and newfound dignity sparked a wave of global emotion. Social media exploded, and the media spoke of a human miracle and an inspiring rebirth. Governments, NGOs, and citizens began to reflect on the true impact of inequality and collective responsibility. But the most incredible thing was yet to come. In a symbolic gesture, Marcus extended his hand to David in front of the entire assembly and said, "No matter where life has thrown us, no matter how much time has been wasted, today, we are together. And together, we can transform this world." The crowd erupted in cheers. Their images, side by side, went around the world. The billionaire and the homeless man, two broken and separated destinies, had found not only their brotherhood, but also a common mission that would inspire generations. Thus, what began as a cruel accident transformed into a universal symbol: humanity can be reborn where injustice has struck, and even the most broken lives can become a source of light.